and welcome to the 20th Pappalardo Fellows Symposium. It's fantastic to be back, not only in person, but with the traditional five-speaker lineup that we haven't had in 4 years. So, Professor and former Pappalardo Fellow Richard Fletcher is going to start us off with some introductory remarks.
Super, thanks so much. So first, just to echo Dito, my very warm welcome to everyone to the Pappalardo Symposium 2023. I was talking, actually, with Rob Simcoe yesterday, where he remarked on how easy it can be to forget how much has changed in even the last year, continuing the extraordinary trajectory the world took over the past 3 years. It's appropriate that this conversation was with Rob for two reasons. First, he is another Pappalardo alumnus who found himself, as I did, arriving at MIT as a fresh-faced fellow and somehow staying. Second, this conversation took place at the weekly Pappalardo Fellows Lunch, one of the highlights of the weekly departmental calendar. I remember attending my first in-person conference after the lockdowns of COVID in fall 2021 and remarking to a colleague that the sudden rush of face-to-face interaction felt like coming up for air. I had somehow personally worried during the various lockdowns that my own scientific creativity had somehow petered out. It turns out, at least for me, that creativity is intimately tied to the ability to talk face-to-face over coffee and food and not via a screen. I have not lost my appreciation for this, and so when I say that I'm delighted we are all together in this space, I mean that absolutely sincerely. So when Carol asked me to give a few words at the beginning of today's symposium, her brief was, quote, that the speaker should focus on sharing their personal experience of the program and its impact on their life and career. So I admit I'm somewhat uncomfortable talking too much about myself. In my view, today is really about two groups of people. First, the fellows themselves, who'll be telling us about the exciting new directions that they are leading and bringing to MIT. And second, to Neil and Jane, whose generosity and vision have made the program what it is. But for a few minutes, let me talk a little about what I consider to be core to the Pappalardo Fellowship program, community. The first aspect of this which I'd stress is the warmth and intimate culture of the program itself. The extraordinary graciousness and warmth with which Neil and Jane welcomed me and my now wife, son, to Boston and the program remains a treasured aspect of our lives here. Personally, I moved to Boston from the UK in 2016 with 2 suitcases, one full of clothes and one full of books, initially staying in an Airbnb in Central Square, to which I'd return after late August nights in the lab, walking back through what felt, coming from southern England, like the warm tropical air of Cambridge in late summer. 7 years later, life looks very different, now living in a house with my wife, 2 toddlers, and driving in each day to work with my own group. We have never forgotten, though, that the first community we were ever part of in Boston was that afforded by the Pappalardo program, and the welcome that Neil and Jane extended to us and all the other fellows. Dinners capped by Neil's speeches, the famous holiday brunches overlooking Boston Harbor, and summer weekends swimming in the cool waters of Buzzards Bay served as a pacing stick, punctuating the evolution of everyone's lives as partners became spouses, careers progressed and took shape, experiments were constructed and offered first glimpses of new science, and children arrived. In addition, monthly dinners for the fellows and their faculty guests became a focal point and were a constant source of unscripted and serendipitous interactions and learning. I personally still remember and reflect on advice that Joe Chikelsky gave during one of these at Craigie-on-Main. So people remember Craigie-on-Main? Back in 2017, still in my first year of the fellowship, regarding the difference between how science and our research trajectories actually progress and the stories that we posthumously tell ourselves, journals, and hiring committees. Somehow the most valuable pearls of wisdom are the ones that arrive in these settings, rather than formal talks or formal writing, and the Pappalardo Fellowship provides forums for this kind of exchange in spades. A second aspect which was striking to me was the middle space which the fellows occupy within the department, somehow equally proximate to faculty as to their postdoctoral and student colleagues. The Pappalardo lunches each Wednesday are a staple of the departmental calendar, and for me was literally the first occasion to be sat at the same table as the faculty. And there I discovered 2 crucial facts. One, the faculty are real people, with opinions, worries, ambitions, and concerns. Second, that there is much more to an academic career than writing papers and getting an experiment to work. The other fellows and I joined discussions certainly on science, but also teaching methodology, intricacies of funding agencies, scientific and MIT politics, and strategies for finding work-life balance in a career which can seem to reward the opposite. I cannot emphasize enough how valuable this exposure was in terms of beginning to develop familiarity and the tools necessary to navigate the next steps in this career. The final aspect of community I would highlight is one in which somehow me and the few fellows sufficiently fortunate to remain at MIT are really the least important, and that's the global and growing group of researchers descended from the program. Former fellows are spread across the US and the rest of the world in universities, national labs, and companies. So I found it quite difficult to even get an exact number, but a quick estimate put this, that the alumni populate faculty at 45 different universities across 8 countries. In addition to carrying with them the MIT spirit common to all who've been part of this institution, they take in addition the culture so emphasized by the Pappalardo Fellowship: openness, curiosity, embracing of excellence, and an understanding that we all perform better, contribute more, and are happier and more fulfilled when we foster a sense of welcome and belonging. A community is its best when it both gives and takes, that it shapes those who enter it and instills in them positive values and traits, and also welcomes its own shaping in turn by the nature and attributes of those who pass through its doors. So on that, I'll close. To the fellows about to speak, I'll say thank you in anticipation for your talks. And to Neil and to Jane, I would say thank you for your steering and influence over the culture and character of the program, which has shaped it into what it is today. Thank you.